They buried her parents under the great Iroko tree. And yet, year after year, Nkem remained the same. Her skin did not wrinkle, her hair did not gray, and her face carried the youthfulness of a child. But the village elders feared her because of all the time that passed. It wasn't just Nkem who didn't change. Misfortune hovered over the land like a shadow. Once upon a time, in the village of Oduma, nestled between hills and thick forest, life flowed like the river that ran beside it. People followed the rhythms of nature, planting their crops, hunting in the forest, and celebrating their ancestors through songs, drums, and rituals. The village was known for its lush green fields, strong hunters, and deep respect for tradition. Children grew into adults, the elderly passed on, and everything followed the natural order. But within the village was one who did not follow this circle, a child named Nkem. Nkem was born during the festival of the new moon, a night of dancing and celebration, when the villagers honored the spirit of the gift of life. Her birth was seen as a blessing, and her parents, Ifenna and Kainene, were beloved by the village. Nkem was their only child, and they cherished her deeply. She was playful, full of laughter, and brought joy to those around her. However, as the years passed, something strange began to happen. While the other children grew taller, Nkem remained the same. Her friends, who once ran the fields with her, began to outgrow her. Their legs became longer, their faces sharper, but Nkem remained as small as she had always been. The villagers noticed, but at first, they shrugged it off. She would grow in her own time, they said. But time didn't change anything. When Nkem turned 10, she still looked no older than a 5-year-old. Her parents, though worried, tried to brush off the whispers from the villagers. They loved Nkem and believed that she would one day catch up. But as the years went on, their hopes began to wane. The elders of the village, especially Baboche, a man known for his wisdom, began to speak about Nkem in hushed tones. "There is something unnatural about that child," Baboche said to the other elders. "She doesn't grow, and the crops have failed for 2 years in a row. Perhaps the spirits are displeased." The villagers were superstitious people, deeply tied to the spirits of the land. The crops had been poor and hunting had become difficult. Some began to believe that Nkem was the cause. Fear of the unknown slowly took root, and with it, suspicion. Nkem's parents tried to shield her from the whispers, but she could see the way Nkem looked at her. Her friends no longer wanted to play with her, and the village children began to avoid her altogether. She overheard their parents warning them, "Stay away from her. She is not like you." One evening, as the sun set over the hills and the village prepared for the night, Nkem sat outside her home, staring into the distance. Her mother Kainene sat beside her, brushing her daughter's hair with gentle hands. "Why don't they like me anymore, Mama?" Nkem asked, her voice soft and sad. Kainene sighed, her heart heavy. She had no answer for her daughter. "They are afraid of what they don't understand," she said finally. "But you are my child, and nothing will ever change that." That night, Nkem's father, Ifenna, returned from the forest with a troubled look on his face. He had heard more whispers from the villagers, and this time they were darker than before. "They want to take Nkem to the oracle," he said in a low voice. "They believe the spirits have cursed her." Kainene's heart clenched. The oracle was feared in the village. She lived deep in the forest and was known for her connection to the spirits, both good and bad. But people only went to her in times of great need, and her word was law. If the oracle declared that Nkem was cursed, there would be no saving her. Days later, a decision was made. Babochi and the other elders gathered at the village square and summoned Ife and Kainene. Nkem stood quietly by her mother's side, her eyes wide and confused. The villagers surrounded them, their faces a mixture of fear and curiosity. Babochi raised his hands to silence the murmurs, saying, "We must seek the wisdom of the oracle. The child does not grow, and our land suffers. The spirits are speaking, and we must listen." Kainene's voice trembled as she spoke. "Please, she is just a child. She has done nothing wrong." But Babochi's eyes were cold. The spirits do not punish without reason. "We will go to the oracle." The journey to the oracle's dwelling was long and silent. Nkem walked beside her parents, clutching her mother's hand tightly. The forest around them grew darker and more foreboding the deeper they went. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches like twisted arms reaching out towards them. Finally, they arrived at the oracle's hut. It was a small, disparate structure, covered in vines and surrounded by ancient statues of forgotten gods. The air was thick with the smell of burning herbs, and the sound of distant drums echoed through the trees. The oracle Mama Chuma was an old woman, her face lined with age, her eyes clouded with the weight of many years. She sat cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by bones, feathers, and strange symbols drawn in the dirt. Babochi spoke first, bowing respectfully. "Mama Chuma, we seek your wisdom. This child Nkem does not grow. The land suffers. We fear the spirits are displeased." The oracle's milky eyes turned towards Nkem, and she said nothing for a long time. The silence hung heavily in the air, making everyone uneasy. Finally, Mama Chuma's voice rasped through the stillness. "This child carries the burden of an old secret," she said. "A secret that lies in the heart of this village." The villagers looked at one another confused. "What secret?" Babochi asked. The oracle's gaze grew sharper. "The child's cause is not her own. It is the result of a sin committed long ago by those who walked this land before you." Nkem's heart raced. A curse? A sin from the past? She had always thought her strange existence was something wrong with her, but now the oracle's words made it sound as if she were the victim of something larger. Ifena, the oracle continued, pointing a bony finger at Nkem's father. "You are tied to this curse. It is your family's secret that binds this child." Ifena's face went pale. "I don't understand," he stammered. The oracle closed her eyes and began to chant softly. The flames from the fire in the center of the hut flickered wildly, casting strange shadows on the walls. When she opened her eyes again, she spoke with a voice that seemed to come from somewhere far away. "Many years ago, before your father's time, there was a betrayal in this village. A man, an elder of the village, coveted something that did not belong to him, another man's wife. Out of greed and lust, he conspired to have the husband killed. The village never learnt the truth. The guilty man lived, raised a family and prospered, while the woman's grief went unanswered. The spirit saw this injustice, and they cursed his descendants. The villagers grasped, and all eyes turned to Ifenna. He shook his head in disbelief. "No, this can't be true. My family has done nothing wrong." Mama Chuma's voice cut through the denial like a blade. "The curse is real. Your daughter is a price that must be paid for the sins of the past." As the weight of the oracle's words settled over the group, a deep silence fell. The villagers stood in shock, unsure of what to do next. Nkem, still a child in body but wise beyond her years, stared up at the oracle herself. Her face twisted in confusion. "What must be done?" Babochi asked, his voice trembling. Mama Chuma sighed, her ancient face weary. To lift the curse, the truth must be spoken. The man who committed the crime may be long dead, but his descendants live. The family must acknowledge the wrongdoing, and justice must be sought for the spirit of the wronged woman. Ifena fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He had known nothing of this dark past, but it was now his burden to bear. "What must I do?" he whispered. "The spirit of the wrong woman must be honored," the oracle said. "A ceremony must be held, and the truth must be told. Only then will the spirit release your daughter." The days that followed were filled with preparation. The village elders worked tirelessly to organize the ceremony, and Ifena thought, though devastated, was determined to do whatever it took to save his daughter. He traveled to the burial grounds of his ancestors, where the oracle had instructed him to speak to the spirit of the wronged woman. On the day of the ceremony, the entire village gathered at the foot of the great Iroko tree. Babochi led the ritual, speaking the words passed down through the generation to call upon the spirit. The air was thick with the smell of burning herbs and the beat of drums. The villagers stood in a circle, their faces tense with anticipation. Nkem sat behind and beside her parents, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of their fear, their hope, and the uncertainty of what would come next. Babochi raised his hands to the sky, his voice echoing through the trees. "Spirit of our ancestors, we call upon you. We come to seek forgiveness for the sins of the past. We ask for your mercy upon this child Nkem and her family. May the truth set them free." As his words hung in the air, Ifena stepped forward. In his hand, he held a small clay pot filled with palm wine, a symbol of peace and atonement. His voice trembled as he spoke. "My ancestors wronged the woman," he said, his eyes cast downward in shame. "A man from my bloodline betrayed his brother and brought grief to an innocent soul. Today I acknowledge this sin, and I beg for forgiveness. Let justice be served, and let the spirit of this wrong woman find peace." He poured the palm wine onto the ground, a libation for the spirits. The villagers watched in silence, the tension growing with each passing moment. Then from the shadows of the trees, a cold wind blew through the clearing. The flames of the ceremonial fire flickered widely, and a low haunting wail echoed through the forest. Nkem clutched her mother's hand tightly as the sound grew louder, filling the air with a sense of dread. The villagers whispered in fear, but Babochi remained calm, his gaze fixed on the dark woods beyond the village. Suddenly, the wail stopped. The wind died down. The clearing fell into silence. Then from the shadows a figure emerged, A ghostly form, dressed in white, her face hidden beneath a veil. It was the spirit of the wronged woman. The villagers gasped and stepped back in fear, but Nkem, to everyone's surprise, stood up and walked towards the figure. Her small frame fragile, but there was a determination in her steps that no one had ever seen before. As she approached the spirit, the woman lifted her veil, revealing the face with sorrow and anger. "You carry the burden of my pain," the spirit said, her voice soft but filled with a deep sadness. "For many years I have wandered, seeking justice for what was done to me. Now you come to ask for forgiveness." Nkem's voice was small but steady. "I didn't know what happened. I am sorry for the pain my family caused you." The spirit's eyes softened as she looked down at the child. "It is not your fault, little one. You are innocent in this, as I was, but justice must be done." She turned to Ifenna, her gaze piercing. "Your family lived in the prosperity while I suffered in silence. But today the truth has been spoken and justice will be served." Ifenna fell to his knees once more. "Please forgive us," he begged. "We are sorry for what was done to you." The spirit looked down at him for a long moment before turning to Nkem. "You have carried the weight of this cause for too long, child. Today I free you." She raised her arms and a soft glow began to emanate from her body, filling the clearing with a warm, gentle light. As the light washed over Nkem, she felt a strange sensation in her body. Her limbs began to tingle, and for the first time in years, she felt herself changing. Slowly, her small frame grew taller, her bones stretched, and her features matured. She was no longer the child who had been frozen in time. The villagers watched in awe as Nkem grew before their eyes, transforming into the woman she was always meant to be. Tears streamed down Kainana's face as she embraced her daughter, overwhelmed with relief and joy. The spirit took her template and completed her. But before she disappeared completely, she spoke one final time. "Remember," she said in her voice barely a whisper now, "the sins of the past will always come to light, but there is always a chance for redemption if you are willing to face the truth." With that, the spirit was gone, leaving the village in silence once more. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the soft sobs of Nkem's mother, who held her daughter tightly. The next morning, the villager woke to a strong and strange feeling of peace. The air felt lighter, and the crops, which had been withering for months, seemed to spring back to life overnight. The village hunters returned with full catches, and the river ran clearer than it had been in years. The curse had been lifted, and Odumo was once again a place of prosperity. As for Nkem, she was no longer the child who never grew. She was a young woman now, her heart free of the burden she had carried for so long. Though the villagers had once feared her, now looked upon her with awe and respect. She had become a symbol of resilience, of facing the truth no matter how painful it may be. But Nkem never forgot the spirit's final words. She knew that the story of the curse was not about her. It was a lesson for all of them. The truth, no matter how deeply buried, would always find its way to come to light. And when it did, the only way forward was through forgiveness and redemption. The lesson of this story teaches us that the truth cannot be hidden forever. The wrongs of the past may be painful, but the acknowledging them is the only way to heal. It is only by facing our mistakes and seeking forgiveness that we can free ourselves from the burdens that hold us back. And in doing so, we not only find peace for ourselves, but also for those we have wronged. This is the end of the story. Well, thank you so much if you followed through with this story and got to this point. Please don't forget to subscribe. Like, the hell? Let me know what your comments are down in the comment section. And please don't forget to share also. See you next in the next story. Bye for now.